Good morning, everybody. Republican candidate running for Assembly to represent the 75th District, Neil Kline, is our very special guest this morning, Thursday, June 6th, 2024. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching Dryden Wire Live. Hey, a quick special thank you to some of our recent guests, including Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany, Wisconsin's 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, who joins me every Tuesday for our Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show, and candidate for U.S. Senate Eric Hovde. You can watch a recording of those shows and all of our live shows on our website at DrydenWire.com, right here on our Facebook page under our videos tab, or it's probably a lot easier, just go to our YouTube channel. That's where we store all of our videos. It's just youtube.com/DrydenWire. Quick reminder, we're doing a special show tomorrow morning at 8:30 right here on our Facebook page, so we can chat with the newly elected mayor in the city of Shell Lake, Rowie Hunsberger. But today, we welcome back to the show our good friend and candidate for Assembly in the 75th District, Neil Kline. Neil, it has been a minute. Good morning.
It has. Good morning. How are you doing?
Pretty well. The sun is coming out, and it's not actually, well, day's not over, it just started. Not raining.
Not yet.
I mean, we need the rain, but, you know.
We do. It's been a bit like, in Florida, you have those afternoon showers every day. You wake up, the sun is shining, and then the rain comes in the afternoon. We've been like that. It's just been raining, and then it'll stop.
So our lawnmower broke. My push mower lawnmower, it broke last year at the end of the year. I'm like, well, I'm not going to buy a new one because we've only mowed the lawn 5 times this year because it was so dry last year, and I don't want to store it all winter long. I'll just buy one in the spring. Well, you know what? I'm doing okay. So I think we're just going to have someone else mow the lawn for the first time ever.
You're out there with
so far that's not working out great for Ben's finances because now we're paying someone else. Like, stop raining.
It'll jump up and get you. It's been funny when I'm out knocking on doors. 9 times out of 10, I pull up to a house and they're out mowing their lawn and they're like, "I just did this yesterday.
Right,
Why do I have to do this?"
Right. So you and I first knew each other or got to know each other. It was in April. I think you came on for a show. You were running in the 29th Assembly District. And I think it was in April of 2020. Like, that was when everything was shut down. So we did a remote show back then. And since then, you and I have kept in touch, and we have talked quite a bit over the years. I consider you a good friend. But you were also on with Kirk Anderson on the Kirk Anderson show, I think a year ago, who does that here on Dryden Wire. And you were talking about, what was that called? Family...
Family-friendly workplaces.
Family-friendly work, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, because that's a big part of your life.
It is, yeah, it is.
But for a lot of people who don't know, well, we should cover 2 things first. One, just get to know you, your bio, right, before we get into the candidate part and whatever. But also, to clarify, the 75th Assembly District, you're not running against Dave Armstrong.
Correct.
So
I'm not.
Would you clarify that or kind of spell that out for our viewers?
Absolutely. Well, and as I'm sure your viewers know, because you've done a great job talking about the changes in the maps that have been through, and it's a mosaic. I mean, it's a weird change for everybody. But the 75th district now is all of Polk County and most of Burnett, so it goes all the way up just south of Danbury, and so that whole geography is now the 75th Assembly District, and it's right where I grew up. To your question about kind of the bio and stuff, my family first moved to Wisconsin when I was in junior kindergarten, I think. We lived in Somerset for a little bit, and then we moved up to Milltown when I was in 4th grade. And my folks still live in the house that they started building back in 2005 when we all moved up. It's not quite done yet, but someday it will be done. I always joke.
2005? It's not...
Well, my mom and dad, they wanted to do it themselves. And so I grew up doing like hardcore woodwork, helping. My dad owns a sawmill. We have a kiln. We've got, he's got all the tools for it. And so it just turned into this gigantic art project. And once you start making a floor, you go, well, we could make that floor better. On the next floor, we'll do it differently. And so you just kind of slowly start putting a house together. But in any case, I grew up in Milltown, went to Unity, graduated from Unity, and then went off to UW-Madison and emerged, I always joke, to the dismay of the faculty, a conservative and a Republican. So I came out the other side of that and kind of bounced around a little bit, lived in New Richmond for a little while back in 2020.
I want to hold on. New Richmond. So you went to college, right? And
Oh, yeah.
now you're in New Richmond? Oh, what did you go to college for?
I went to school for political science and history, and I always joke those
Awesome.
are two eminently employable skills.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody runs around and asks, "Where are my history majors at?" But I really liked it. I mean, I think that I think whenever you go to school, and whatever, if it's a 4-year degree or if it's a technical degree, whatever it is, you're always proud of what you went to school for, and you always tell folks you should go to school for that. So I tell people you should go
You
and get
should.
a history.
Right.
Yeah, you
You
should go get a history degree. But I really did like it because, and this is a bit sappy, but I can't help myself. The root part of the word history is story, and it's the story of how we got here. It's the story of what happened, and I really really liked it. And I think that it taught me how to research. It taught me how to think. It was a really good, really really good experience. And then I ended up in banking. Because that's what you do when you get a history major.
But out of curiosity, when you went in for political science and history, did you have a career in mind to use those, or just you like the political science, you like the history, but like I don't want to be a history teacher? Did you have a career in mind?
I don't know that I could say I necessarily had a career in mind. I mean, I was in Madison. I was working for Sheila Harsdorf. She was our state senator from up here. And I definitely felt that history was useful if you want to go and serve, in any capacity, whether that's locally in your community in a volunteer position or in government someday if the opportunity ever came up. So I don't think it would be fair to say that I went in knowing like I want to get a major,
Sure.
I want to major in history so I can go do X. I mean, it's been kind of a winding path for me. I majored in history, and then, like I said, I went into banking. It's not quite a one-to-one match, but I do think that it taught me a lot of skills that I really value and that I use every day in my job.
So then you went to New Richmond and to do banking.
I lived in New Richmond, and I worked for a bank actually over in St. Paul. They do agricultural lending, and so I worked it ended up being about 5 years for them. And they're part of the farm credit system. And so they do a lot of lending out to farmers and ranchers across America. And the bank served, I forget the number of states, but it essentially was the Dakotas to Arkansas and Wyoming to Ohio was the territory.
It's a weird
that the bank served.
Geographic
It's
area.
a weird.
Yeah.
But it was a wonderful experience, and I think and we'll get into it when we start talking about the campaign, but rural vitality, one of the important aspects of it is finance. You have to have access to capital so that you can start projects and build businesses and build farms and all that kind of stuff. So it was a wonderful experience.
And so that took you up to about when? What year are we up to around now?
It would take me up to 2022, which is when my current gig started.
Perfect. And that's what you were on with Kirk Anderson a month ago, which, by the way, you can find that on our YouTube channel. You were on, and I watched that show. It was brilliant. I loved it. But let people know what that is about.
Sure. So I'm the executive director at Family Friendly Workplaces. I always joke we have a staff of one, and I executive direct myself. But we certify employers as family friendly, really in an effort to help them find staff, because right now everyone is struggling with a really, really serious workforce shortage. And Family Friendly Workplaces is organized around trying to address that workforce shortage. And I won't get too wonky, though I'm capable of it, but I'll restrain myself from getting too into the weeds. But when you look statewide, Wisconsin in 2030, we're only going to grow our workforce by about 129 souls. That is insane. And you calculate that number by taking the number of 65 to 69-year-olds who are retiring, and then you subtract that from the 15 to 19-year-olds coming in. So you've got the folks coming in and then the folks going out, and that gives you a number called net workforce entrance, which is 129 in 2030. That is insane. And the way to think about that number essentially is if you're an employer in Wisconsin and you're trying to hire staff in 2030, you are competing with folks for one of those 129 new souls.
Oh, sure.
Coming into the workforce, right? So if you start to think about what that means, if you're trying to run a small business, that is extremely difficult.
Yeah. Carol put in a comment here. Brad says, met you yesterday. Thanks for visiting St. Croix Falls.
Oh, I was happy to be there. Great to see you guys.
I'm assuming Brad is okay. I get it now. I'm assuming it was you. I don't think I was in St. Croix Falls yesterday. So I don't want to go. I don't want to gloss over this too much. And you're right. We don't want to get too far into the weeds because you already did a show with Kirk Anderson about this. But how does that help employers? Like what you do? Is it just the education piece, or is there another piece that is? And here's how we can address it now.
Sure. So we actually talk about our workforce shortage across a couple of different timeframes, to your point. So the first is helping differentiate employers in the market, like Ben's widgets, right? Let's say you're trying to hire somebody. If you become certified, you can then say the benefits that we offer have been evaluated by an independent third party, and we have received our stamp of excellence. We have really strong benefits. You don't have to take Ben's word for it. Take Family-Friendly Workplaces' word for it.
It makes an employer, I'm putting words in your mouth, but to me, it sounds like it makes an employer or a business more attractive to one of those hires, because now they can look at all those things, and if to get that seal of approval from you, they have to provide certain things, right?
Yep, they do. Absolutely. And so it is.
A few, can you name just a few of those things that in order to get this, stamp of approval?
Sure. Yeah, we have a matrix that we use. And so we ask about your healthcare benefit. We ask about time off. We ask about childcare, which few employers do, but we're starting to see employers offer childcare benefits, early childhood support, and then kind of some other stuff. Like, for example, do you have preferred parking for pregnant moms? If not, send Doug out there with, a T-post and go put that sign up, right? Like, there are things you can do. And little things, they
make a big difference.
And we always talk with employers, we have certified universities and we have certified one staff law firms. And we always tell folks that benefits are a journey and there are things you can do that will help families and will help your employees be with their families. And I think that at the end of the day, family is one of the most important things in someone's life. And people will look for employers that recognize that and want to help them be with their family as much as they can. And I think that a lot of employers are recognizing that and are working to try and move in that direction because it is a tight labor market. And in Polk County, for example, and Burnett, we're worse off than that number that I shared earlier statewide. We have more people leaving the workforce than entering it, which means that our workforce is actually shrinking in Polk and Burnett counties. And that means that there are literally less bodies available to hire in Polk and Burnett counties than there used to be. And that's a serious challenge that we need to address.
Yeah, and that's brilliant because sometimes just throwing money at a problem isn't always the right answer. So if there's two competing, or if you're applying for two jobs and they both pay about the same or about equal distance from your home and etc., but if this other job has a lot of the things that you just mentioned, it's okay. And plus, I think that would also help with some reducing the revolving door and then all the money that goes into the training because they're more likely to stay there because of those. I'm going to call them fringe benefits. They're not. But these are things that make their workplace more enjoyable that they benefit from. So that's a really good idea. Did you move from New Richmond? Where are you now? Osceola?
I live in Osceola. Yep.
So when did you move to Osceola?
I moved to Osceola. It would have been right about 2022, actually.
Right about when you start. Okay.
Yep. Moved to Osceola then. And it, it's been wonderful. I mean, it being so much closer to family is nice. I mean, not so much closer, but just a little bit closer is really nice. And my sister just moved back home. She actually lives just down the road from my parents. My brother just finished college, so he's back. He lives in Minneapolis now. So that the clan is slowly coming back together. It's really nice.
I find that same thing. My brother moved back here because we grew up with Shell Lake. I'm in Spooner now, but they're Shell Lake Spooner. It's like Minneapolis in St. Paul, but like on a micro level. We're just right next door. But my brother moved back here after many years being gone. I moved back here. My wife had moved back here after many years of being gone to be around where we grew up and our parents. It's just, I don't know. The older we get, the more you realize when I get out in the world, it was fun and I liked it. But, I really miss rural Northwest Wisconsin. There's something about it that makes it awesome.
There is. There's this wonderful charm. And as I look at it, I mean, we've been lucky. We just bought a house here in Osceola, and this is where we're going to spend the balance of our lives, and we're going to do it here because we love it. And I think that a lot of people, I think, go through that kind of boomerang that you were describing, because there is no place. I mean, I like to think I'm decently well traveled. There is no place like Northwestern Wisconsin.
100% agree.
The magic and the people and just all of it. There's no place like it.
You should run for office or something.
I should, shouldn't I? That'd be a good idea.
Hey, speaking of that, so at what point did you decide, you know what, I'm going to run? Because, again, so the 75th, as you said, is no longer, it's not going to be Barron and Washburn. It's now got moved over to Polk and pretty much all of Burnett, most of Burnett. And that actually is more like Gay Magnifice's seat. Ish. I mean, it isn't, but kind of is. But she isn't running for re-election. So when did you kind of decide, when did you know or start thinking, actually now that I'm in Osceola and, maybe I should think about it. Was it a long process or just you woke up one morning and said, that's it, I know what I'm doing?
Well, it would be disingenuous to say it was a bolt of lightning. I think it was always something that I was aware could happen. And it doesn't come from a place of personal ambition for me. It comes from a place of really a belief that there are challenges in our communities, and I want to be a part of trying to solve them and trying to make sure that we have vibrant communities over the next 30 and 50 years. And so when the opportunity came up, you kind of got to make a decision if you're going to jump in or not. And I just decided to jump in because, it is a time commitment. I mean, you've got to get out and you got to talk to people, which I love. But it takes some time, and you got to get out and talk to people where they live. And so a lot of it is me. I mean, some of it's self-serving because I get to ride my motorcycle pretty much every day. So I ride my motorcycle from house to house, and I talk to folks and hear about their problems and tell them why I'm running and have those kinds of conversations. And it's I get it's a lot of fun. For me, I really, really do enjoy it. Yeah.
So there's two other people that are running in that, two other Republicans, and I don't remember the timelines of this. When you decided to run, I don't know if anybody else had already announced at that point. If you were first, then no big deal. But if it was after, was there any thought of, well, maybe I won't? Maybe because sometimes, and it doesn't have to be Republicans, it could be Democrats, but it's everybody just get behind that one person. I don't want to disrupt the apple cart. Okay. Did that dissuade you at all? You may have even heard, even if you announced before everyone else, again, I can't remember what the timeline was, that I don't care about if anybody else is running. It's what I want to do, and I think I have a lot of reasons I think I would be really good at doing this, and I think I want voters to decide.
Yeah, it definitely was more that latter point for me. I mean, I was the last candidate to announce.
Okay.
And so the field had pretty much been set by the time I'd announced. But ultimately, when I was working for Sheila Harsdorf, she had this line, and it's genius, and it's beautiful, and it's great. It's that we decide if we run, and the people decide if we serve. And that is the truth, and that is what I'm operating on, right? You got to go put yourself out there and talk to folks, and the voters will decide. And I trust voters to decide who they want to have representing them. And in order to do that, you have to, give them the option to vote for you. And so it really, for me, I think that there was an open seat and the opportunity to run came up, and you have to, life is all about choices. And if you don't do it, that's okay. But if you don't do it, you might sit there and go, man, maybe I should, what if kind of stuff. And I believe in the issues that I'm running on. I believe in our small communities up here. And so I wanted to run to try and work on those things.
And that's one of the, whether it's Republican or on the Democrat side, in a primary, if there are others, like more than one, how do you separate yourself? So I mean, I'm not talking about, well, you have to go after them and say they're terrible. I'm not talking about that. I mean, okay, there's going to be 3 Republicans on the ballot. What separates you? So does that go through your mind like, okay, if they're this and I want to be this, or is it nope? I know exactly what I'm going to run on and why I'm running on it. Don't care what they're doing.
I think it's much more the latter.
Okay.
I know why I'm here. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and ultimately, I think we need authenticity and we need honesty
Yeah, and so
in
this, like, what is your campaign? Like, what is your focus? Your campaign, your stump speech when you go up and you knock on a door.
politics.
I'm Neil Kline and I'm running, and here's why you should talk to me.
Yeah. Well, in short, I'm running because I think we got to save small towns. I think that they've got some really big challenges ahead, and a lot of those challenges come from the conversation we were just having, related to family friendly and the economic vitality of small communities like ours here in Polk and Burnett counties. And so for me, that focus really comes down to 3 kind of priority areas. The first one is tax relief and limited government. The second one is economic growth and jobs.
Hold
And
on.
the third one
Limited
is
government. What's the second one?
oh, economic growth and jobs.
Okay, what growth? Got it.
And then the last one is education and families.
Education
And
and families. Okay.
I I talk about those 3 things because in my view, those are the things that give people the tools to build their own lives. And I want everyone to have the tools to go and build their own lives because then we don't have to do it for you. And we can't do it for you. We're not capable, we being the government, are not capable of doing that. And ultimately, people know best what they want for themselves and their families. And if we focus on tax relief, economic growth, education, and families, that's how we make sure people have those tools. You can summarize it, I think, by saying, I think we got to teach people to fish, and I think we've got to stop giving them fish. And once you teach people to fish, you're in a much better place.
So how do we do that? Tax relief. How? What does that look like? What is, like, you win and you get in, and it's okay. First thing, man, I got to get this going. Like, is there some examples, or maybe there's been some things that have come up that you're like, hey, that's a really good thing for small towns, falling under your first one, right?
Yeah.
Government, limited government, but tax relief, and it didn't get approved or passed in the government, or maybe the governor vetoed it. And you're like, no, that would have been great. Do you have any kind of
Yeah.
examples of what that looks like?
I do. I have got 2, I think, in that
Okay.
first category. So on the tax relief side, one of the primary sources of revenue for the state is income tax.
Mhm.
And tax relief and income tax relief is a very effective mechanism to deliver that kind of tax relief. And right now it's frustrating because Wisconsin is sitting on like a $7 billion surplus or something.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of cash just sat in Madison, not doing anybody anything. And so it's frustrating when those tax cuts and Assembly Republicans have worked to try and pass those tax relief measures, and the governor's vetoed them. That's really frustrating because ultimately it's your money, and in an inflationary environment like ours, in small communities like ours, those dollars matter to people, not only from a philosophical perspective, but from a practical one as well. That's real, and we have to be focused on delivering that kind of tax relief. And I'm not just making this up. Like I'm on the village board here in Osceola. I have voted against tax increases because we must live within our means, and people are strapped right now, and we cannot go to them and ask for more. And so I feel I have a record on that of being consistent with my views there. So that tax relief piece, there's a lot of effort and good effort that's gone into it, and I want to be supportive of that. On the limited government side, I think there's actually an interesting example from Central Polk County as it relates to fire departments. And I'll back up there just to say, I think when we talk about regulatory reform, right, the moment I say regulatory reform, your eyes just kind of glaze over because it sounds very boring. But these rules matter and they impact our communities. And as an example, the regulations around training for fire departments, those are set at the state level. I was talking with a friend of mine up in Centuria while I was up there the other day, and he's on the fire department in Centuria. And they're getting regulatory requirements that were designed for Madison and Milwaukee. Madison and Milwaukee need to know how to fight a fire in a high-rise building. Centuria does not have a high-rise building. Why are we having one-size-fit-all rules for local fire departments that aren't Madison and Milwaukee? And the reason that matters is because fire departments are struggling to attract volunteers. One of the reasons is because training is extremely intense, and there are good reasons for that. I mean, obviously, you don't want someone in a house fire who doesn't know what they're doing, right? Like that would be really bad. My parents are on the Milltown Volunteer Fire Department. I'm glad that they know what they're doing, right? But we always have to make sure that we are getting the regulatory juice for the squeeze, right? And if we aren't, we need to be ready to advocate for our communities and make sure that we aren't being stuck with these one-size-fit-all solutions, because that will constrain us over time. And it takes someone in office who's ready to go there and advocate on those things, learn about the issues, and then be an effective voice for, in this example, small town volunteer fire departments.
What about
I think those are examples there.
What about economic growth? How do we do that? I mean, what is your again, kind of going back to the original question, or the question for the other one, is there something that is on the table that didn't get done and you're like, oh, come on, that you can be there and continue that support and continue that fight? Or is there like a unique, here's something weird, but I think it could work?
Yeah. Well, I think within economic growth, there are, and the challenge here, this is what I do every day. So you can rein me in at some point, Ben, if I start getting off the reservation.
Just don't use big words or
small words. There are really, I think, three problems that we need to focus on. The first is our workforce shortage in rural communities. The second is our housing shortage. And the third is our childcare shortage. Those three things are slowly sapping rural communities of economic energy. And I'll focus in on housing because there has actually been some really good work done by Dave Armstrong on housing. Just to kind of put some context on it, Polk County, over the next decade or so, it's projected that Polk County needs about 2,400 more housing units, new housing units.
It's a lot of housing units.
That's a lot of housing units. And that presents a really big challenge for communities. One of the downstream effects of that shortage is that if you're a young family, you can't really find a place to afford that you can buy. It's just the market, the median sale price for a home in Polk County is around $300,000. Most working young families can't afford a $300,000 house.
We're a working old family or middle-aged family, and we could, what? Are you kidding?
That is the problem that we face. And so Dave Armstrong has done a lot of good work to make sure that all of the puzzle pieces are on the table for developers and communities to build housing that's fit for their needs. And so that could be a low interest loan program. That could be grants to local governments to help with utility extensions, right? So that as you're building that new house, you've got some support to try and lower the cost of that development so a young family can afford to purchase it. It's lots of little things that together add up towards helping make a development possible. We need people in office who are ready to focus on that, because the housing shortage, the childcare shortage, the workforce shortage, these are multi-year problems. One thing that I'll mention on the childcare side that I'm excited about and that I would be very interested in working to try and develop legislation around is I think we need to bring employers to the table as it relates to childcare, because childcare is a workforce issue. There are a lot of people who aren't working because childcare is too expensive or hard to find. And so they're not in the workforce. And we, here in Osceola, I hear from employers about the need to try and address childcare. Right now, there are some limited tax incentives for employers to be involved in childcare. I think we need to look at expanding those, because ultimately, if we can get more people into the workforce, that increases economic activity in our local communities, and that helps our local economy. And childcare is a constraint on that. So if we can work to address childcare, we can work to solve that problem.
What is the bullet point version of the reason that we're having that childcare shortage? You touched on some of those, but it's the workforce in childcare too, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that really is the core challenge. Childcare workers are paid $12 to $13 an hour, and they're paid that because families and parents, they can't afford anymore. Childcare is a second mortgage for a lot of people, and so you've got childcare centers where they can't pay staff enough to keep them, and so they're constantly turning over new staff. And that means that it's extremely difficult. Any business, excuse me, it's hard to run any business if you have high turnover. And that's the problem with childcare. And we're working on a project in Osceola kind of focused on this. And one of the primary things we have to be concerned about is recruiting and retaining staff. Because if we don't keep staff, they're going to go out the door. You can go to Quick Trip and make more money and not have the same challenges that you do in childcare. We lose a lot of people that way. And so it is a gnarly problem. But one thing that I want to say, and sometimes I talk to folks on the door and I say, we need to save small towns. These are the problems we have. And I get this reaction of like, well, we can't, or they're too far gone, or that's just it, Godspeed. It's not going to happen. You are talking to a true believer in the potential and promise of our communities, and a believer that if we work to address these issues, we can solve them. And I refuse to be the kind of person to whom life happens. You know what I mean? There are people who go through life where they're just on the receiving end of whatever comes their way. We have the power to influence our future, and we need to work together to do that. And when we do, we can make things better. And so this whole campaign is fundamentally optimistic and believes that there are positive things we can do for our communities if we focus on them and work diligently to get it done.
And that leads to our the third one, kind of your three things that you talk about right away when you're speaking to people, and that is education and family.
Yep. And I talk about those things because ultimately family is the cornerstone of society. None of us would be who we are without our families. And the reality is I think there's a lot of families that are struggling right now, and we need to be focused on supporting parents as they make decisions about how to raise their kids, because ultimately parents raise kids, not the government. And I say that with a mom who's a public school teacher. She already raised her kids. We were trouble enough. She wants to educate your kids. She's not working in public education to raise your kids. That's up to parents. And a lot of parents, I think, want to, nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to screw my kid over today. That's not what happens. But we've got to make sure that public schools are partnering with parents as parents try to raise their kids, and that they're supporting each other as kids go through school.
What are do you have an example of what they're not doing now, on how you're saying that education and families, they need to partner together and communicate together? Are they not right now?
I think that there's been a lot of anxiety that I've heard on the doors, that there are parents who feel they don't know what's happening in their local schools. And I think that there is ultimately, when I hear that tells me that there's a communication breakdown. And we need to make sure that parents have that transparency and that access to their school boards and to schools generally. And I think that a lot of that comes down to your local school, taking the time to talk with parents and engage. But also, if there are things, and I frame it up this way. When I was going to school, if the school knew something about me and didn't just have the automatic approach, and I think Unity did, but if they didn't have the automatic view of, we know something about Neil, we need to call Neil's parents, right? Yeah. We need to tell his parents what's going on. My parents would be irate, as they should be. And I think that making sure that we are fostering a strong relationship between schools and parents is really important. The other piece...
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have a question real quick about that? Well, first, I want to just say that at our school, or here in Spooner, we'll get emails from the school, and it's sometimes the teachers, and sometimes get an email from a teacher where maybe my son was maybe talking too much or a little, something. And they will send it in, just here's what it is. And every time I get one of those, I actually say, I would like to talk to you. So then they call, but it also takes the parent to actually want to. It's not just, oh boy, I saw this. Kenneth, you're grounded. What? No, I want to find out exactly what happened, and then I talk to the teacher. But that helps build that rapport, of course.
Absolutely.
Now, maybe not everybody has the time to do that, but it's your child. Spend 10 minutes on the phone with your teacher if there was an incident at school. Probably a good idea. So it kind of goes both ways. But what you're talking about, or reminded me of, and maybe that's not what we were talking about. I don't know if it's still a very big topic anymore, but it was a couple of years ago in Wisconsin, because that was during an election cycle, and a lot of people were talking about schools that if your child maybe identified as a different something, and then now it's Jane instead of Joe, that the school didn't have to notify the parents. Is that? I'm not saying that's what you were talking about, but that reminds me of that. So with that said, what are your thoughts on that? Is that one of those, no, you should absolutely tell the parents, or
100%.
Maybe not?
No, you absolutely should tell the parent. You should be communicating with parents about things big and small, right? I mean, because ultimately, again, it's their kid. They are the ones that raise their kid. And I don't think that there's a lot of disagreement up in our neck of the woods about this, but I do think that we need to reassert, some of these basic views, because ultimately parents raise kids, not the government. And when we get in that situation, that dynamic, Ben, is what kicked off a lot of this conversation with folks. It's like, oh my God, what does the school know? And they're not telling, all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's weird, right?
It is.
Yeah, it is. And it's not weird about the Joe or the Jane, where it's like, if you're right, I totally agree with your parents, and they'd be the same as my parents, and the same as Drush and I would be. If they knew something they didn't tell me, good or bad, or just information, I'd kind of flip out.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
It doesn't have to be stuff. It could be like, Timmy did great today.
Right.
All of that kind of stuff can be good. We can celebrate and inform at the same time. So I think that's part of that families piece. But I also think within education generally, we need to be making sure we have an education system that meets our needs. And this is a little bit of a story, but I think it's important. There are a lot of kids these days who are deciding not to go on to maybe higher education at quite the rate that they used to. So they're entering the workforce right away. And they're doing that for understandable reasons. I mean, college is very expensive. And you can go into the workforce and get a pretty good paying job, right out of high school, which is great. And I think we've made a lot of progress on supporting kids when they make the decision to go into the trades. It's a great decision. I mean, I fully support kids who want to do that. I also, though, think particularly if, whatever level of education you begin pursuing out of high school, particularly if you enter the workforce right away, you probably someday are going to need a credential. You're going to want a new job or whatever it is, and you'll need some form of training potentially to get that new job. We need an education system that is prepared to meet students wherever they are. Because, when I went to Madison, I went for that 4-year college experience, right? I wanted to go to the football game. I wanted to have that experience.
Right, the social experience. That's huge, right?
Absolutely. That's not as common anymore. And I think particularly the UW system must be pushed to be much more collaborative between technical schools, high schools, and within the UW system, because what's going to happen, there are going to be more people coming in with some education, right? And what we don't need to do is force them to take a bunch of stuff that's not relevant or make them retake stuff because it's been a while. None of that. We need to make sure that people can come in, get the education they need, and then go back into the workforce seamlessly. Sure. And I think that's a change. That is a change because college, particularly 4-year degrees, they've always been structured as those, kind of linear. You come for 4 years, we teach you, and then you leave. Sure. That's not the way forward.
It just isn't anymore. Well, and plus a lot of those things, a lot of people don't want to be a teacher anymore. A lot of people don't want to be a lawyer anymore, which I can't believe we're saying that. Well, actually not just lawyers, but really prosecutors. A lot of people don't want to go into the fields that when we were young, at least, what do you want to be when you grow up? There was like basically 5 answers. I want to be a veterinarian. Well, not a lot of people want to do that anymore. It's just everything. Like nobody wants to go into all the fields that a lot of those you would typically need to get a 4-year degree.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say too, fields we desperately need. I mean, I'll use
right.
Osceola as an example, right? So policing is critical work. They do incredible work. They've been beat down unfairly over the last couple of years, and I think we gotta push back on that. But in Osceola, we've had 3 openings on our police department, and they've been open for a while, and we've gotten like 3 applicants, and they all kind of had problems. They were like running from something else.
Yeah, no.
And that, when we talk about the
10 years ago, they would have had 40 applicants.
Exactly. And that is a shining example of the challenge that small communities are going to be facing over the next projectable future, because there just aren't as many people as there used to be, and particularly police officers, teachers, folks on the shop floor. If we don't figure out how we're going to try and recruit those kinds of folks, we're not going to get them. And Ben, that's why I'm talking about these 3 issues, because those 3 issues directly impact that. If you want a police officer, they have to be trained. They need to come from a family that's taught them all of those important soft skills that a police officer needs. There need to be quality paying and high benefit jobs that they want to take once they're done with that education. And they need to be able to live the life that they want to live, which means that we can't be taking all their money in taxes, right? Mm-hmm. That is the package deal. And if that package deal is replicated across every job and family in Polk and Burnett counties, and we need to be focused on it, because that is how we have strong communities for the next 30 and 50 years.
Well, and also a lot of these people are going into their careers. They don't even need college education or any. You can now just go to, OnlyFans, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. They're influencers. And they're making a ton of money. So people making, it's ridiculous, like $50,000 a month, and that's not like super rare. Oh my goodness! Like no wonder why nobody wants to go and get a job,
right?
But who's paying these people? I don't understand that. It's just weird. It's I think I finally hit that point. I think after I hit 40, so that was a few years ago. I think I just stopped caring about anything new. Like nope, not anymore.
Like meh, he'll take care of himself.
So how do you? So you're going around and you're talking, and you're listening as everybody does, or most people do when they're running for something. Go around, talk, listen. You get elected. Now, how do you hear from your constituents? How do you know what at that point? Or is it, it's not that I don't want to hear from you. Please let me know. Call the office, etc. But I'm going to do my thing, and we'll talk again in a couple of years.
I don't think a couple-year gap is not, in my view, acceptable. You've got to not only talk to people in campaigns, you got to keep talking to them when you're elected, because you're ultimately there to represent them. How can you represent them if you stop talking to them? I mean, and I say that like that implies that I think I'm not one of them. I am. I grew up here. Like I live in these communities. These are my people, just as much as I'm theirs. But you absolutely have to keep talking with people, and whether that's going to the local coffee clutch or talking to your local elected officials, or visiting with people at their homes, whatever it is, I think the ultimate job of a representative is to make sure that you remain connected to the communities that you're there to serve. And I view that as, it's a civically sacred responsibility. I'm asking people for their vote. That is amazing to me that I even live in a country where that's an option. Here we are. It's the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Wow.
We need to serve people in a way that fits the sacrifices that have been made to get us to this moment. And that means that when you're elected, the work does not stop. You must continue serving people, because that is your obligation when you're serving people.
What do you do if you get, let's say you could, magically, you could get, not magically, but you probably have to be, because I don't think it's possible, that you had 80% of your constituents, so you're elected, 80% of them all come to you, or they do a poll or some kind of a flyer thing, and 80% say, we want this. and it doesn't align with what you believe. And I don't mean like faith belief, but it's we want strip clubs on every corner, or we want to legalize prostitution, we want guns in cars, and or just pick anything. It doesn't matter what it is, any arbitrary topic. But it doesn't align with what you would want to do. Do you say no? Well, obviously not just directly. You have to talk, you have to listen, but ultimately it's no, and here's why. Or is it, hey, I'm supposed to represent these people, and that's what the people want, so okay.
I think that you've got to, you mentioned you always got to listen, you always got to talk. But I think an important part of that is if there's something that, and this happens on the trail, I'm talking to somebody and they feel a certain way about an issue that I don't maybe see it the same way. I'm going to tell them that I don't see it that way. I'm going to tell them why. And then we're still going to be friends after that. Like, we don't have to hate each other because we disagree on something. And I think that we need to relearn that skill. We don't always have to agree, but we can always still get along. We can still say hi to each other at the grocery store. I'm still going to see you there. And I think that kind of approach of honesty is really important. And I a lot of people I talk to, they appreciate it when I tell them what I actually think. And when they know that maybe we don't agree, but hey, Neil took the time to tell me why, to talk with me about that issue, and I really respect that.
Well, you and I have had that, right, over the years. You and I have talked, and there's things that we don't agree on.
For sure.
Right, we're still friends. It's perfectly fine, right?
Yeah.
We just disagree on a few things. It's no big deal. I disagree with my wife on a few things. She's not around. Hopefully, we'll skip past this part when she watches it tonight. I agree with everything you say, honey. Edit that part out. Right, and we still get along. We sleep in the same bed, for crying out loud.
Yeah. I think at core, it's being a fully developed adult. Like, we can disagree. That's okay.
Yeah.
And we can work together in spite of those disagreements. And I think if we can work together because we agree about one thing, but we disagree about another, that's okay. That's how it's supposed to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's June Dairy Month. You're going out to a lot of June dairy breakfasts and
I've got them on my calendar.
Yeah.
Yes, I am looking forward to it. And no, it's a great time. It was funny when I worked for Sheila while she was secretary at the Department of Ag. June Dairy Month was busy because there were quite a lot of those that we were going to. It's wonderful to see folks and to celebrate too. I'll say, the dairy industry in this state is truly remarkable. It is advanced. It is technically intense. I mean, it's incredible what people do on dairy farms, and to have the opportunity to invite people in who, kids sometimes think milk comes just from the grocery store. Well, no, it doesn't. It comes from a cow, and this is what a cow is, and this is how it works.
Yeah.
All that. It's really a great opportunity to celebrate all the hard work that farmers do, and all of the, economic engine that is modern agriculture.
It is also Pride Month this month. Quickly, your thoughts on the flag, the progressive flag being flown at the Capitol. Fan of it? Not a fan of it? What are your thoughts?
I think that using the Capitol as a platform in that way for a kind of ultimately what is a social discussion, that doesn't resonate with me. Sure. I think that the Capitol building is a place where we can have those kinds of discussions, where we can talk about issues. But to me, it opens up what's the next month? What flag you want to fly after that?
Ultimately, that's just. I honestly, it's flying there right now. It has zero impact on my life. It just does. I don't. It's not going to change my day at all. But what I don't like is it elicits a response from somebody else. So, as you know, I'm a Christian man. Well, I'm a struggling Christian, but that's redundant. I guess all Christians were all struggling, I suppose. Let's say there was a Christian flag. I don't think there is one. And they said, we want to put that up. I would say, no, please don't. Because there's people that say, oh, you're Christian? Fine, that's cool, you do you. Oh, thank you, I appreciate it. But now they put the flag up, and now all of a sudden they went from neutral to now they dislike me or Christians as a whole. And if they disliked them before, now they hate Christians. So it elicits this visceral response and feeling. Like, that's what I don't like about it. I don't care what the flag is. If it ends up being, it's gonna divide people even more. then what are we doing? Like, put it in your yard. I don't care. But also, the government, what? I don't know. It's weird.
I think those kinds of things quickly turn into sticks in the eye, and it's just like.
Did you see over in, I saw it on thehill.com a couple days ago, the Republicans in Colorado, there's like a social media campaign for this, are calling for people to burn the gay pride flag or the rainbow flag, progressive flag. And I'm like, what? See, this is just it. I'm like, no, don't burn the flag, you moron. That's not helping because now that's going to do what? Now it's going to make the people there going to be upset. And it's going to keep escalating. Just stop it.
Yeah. Well, and I just think everyone, like, live your life.
Just seriously.
Like, just live your life.
Just seriously.
You live your life, I'll live mine, and everything will be fine. And I think that we need to kind of work to get back to that kind of approach.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. This is from Denise. You have my vote. Loved talking with you a few weeks ago and reminiscing about Sheila. Very nice. Thank you, Denise, for putting that in. All right, we've blown past our time. But is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talked about that we didn't get a chance to?
I think that it's been a great, as always, Ben. I love
talking to you. Yeah.
And I think as the campaign goes on, I want people to know I'm totally accessible. If you go to my website, you can get in touch with me there. I'm handing out my cell phone number to people I talk to. I mean, don't ever hesitate to reach out if you ever have any questions. And otherwise, August 13th, asking for your vote. And I really appreciate everyone's time. Hey,
where can people go to find out more information about you? I should have written that down.
My website, it's neilklineforassembly.com. And so you can go there and learn more about the campaign. We've got a Facebook page. We've got an Instagram page. You can give us a follow there and stay up to date as well.
The 4, is it FOR or the number
FOR, all spelled out.
Neil Kline for Assembly.
That's right.
.com. And your Facebook page. Yep. Awesome. Man, I love having you on. I can't believe we went 4 years between having you on.
Too long.
I know. Thank you so much. Special thank you to our guest today, Republican candidate running for Assembly to represent District 75, Neil Kline, for taking the time to come on for a chat with us. I'll see all of you tomorrow morning when I'll be joined by the newly elected mayor in the city of Shell Lake, Rowie Hansberger. So until then, for DrydenWare.com, I'm Ben Dryden, saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.